Most people believe that avoidant men can't form deep attachments, that they float through relationships untouched, unmarked, unscarred, that they are cold, self-contained, unreachable. But that isn't true. Avoidant men do bond, just not easily and not often. They bond once, profoundly, and forever, with the one person who reached beneath their defenses, touched their shadow, and mirrored back something they didn't know how to love in themselves. This is the paradox of the avoidant. He runs from intimacy, yet is defined by the one bond he could never escape, the one that left a psychic imprint so deep that every relationship afterward becomes a repetition or an attempt at erasure. The hidden architecture of the avoidant mind. Avoidant attachment isn't born from apathy. It's born from fear. In Jungian terms, the avoidant lives in exile from his own feeling function. He's the man who learned early that needing love was dangerous, that vulnerability invited disappointment. So he built a fortress, not around his heart, but around his instinct to connect. Inside he feels safe, controlled, powerful. But that safety has a cost. He becomes a stranger to his emotional depths. He avoids love, not because he doesn't feel, but because when he finally does, it's overwhelming. The one who pierces his defenses. Then one day he meets her, the one person whose presence disrupts the structure of his emotional world. She doesn't storm the fortress. She stands before it, unafraid. Her presence doesn't demand, it invites. She mirrors not his strength, but his longing, not his independence, but his hunger for closeness. For the first time, he experiences what Jung called the anima projection, the feminine aspect of his soul. He sees in her the tenderness he buried, the innocence he disowned, the capacity to love that once made him feel weak. And something ancient awakens. He feels seen, exposed, terrified, alive. She doesn't just attract him, she activates him. The battle between love and control. When an avoidant bonds, it begins as a civil war within him. One part wants to surrender, another insists that love is a threat. He withdraws, not because he doesn't care, but because caring too much feels like annihilation. He ghosts, not to escape you, but to escape himself. And yet, even in silence, he cannot sever the bond. You've entered his unconscious, the sacred space Jung called the psyche's inner temple. You live there, not as a person, but as a symbol of connection, vulnerability, and transformation. The one. He never stops remembering. He tries to forget you. He dates others. He tells himself it wasn't love, but deep down, he feels a psychic echo. You became his mirror, his initiation, his unfinished story. Every time he's drawn to someone new, a trace of you appears. He doesn't miss your face. He misses who he was with you, the version of himself that almost became whole. Until you make the unconscious conscious, Jung said, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. For the avoidant, that fate is losing what he most desires, and the one he bonds with forever becomes the archetype of that desire, the woman who awakened his soul, and whose memory becomes the template for every love he sabotages. The silent haunting. Years later, you might think he's forgotten. He hasn't. He's haunted, not by you, but by the unintegrated parts of himself that you embodied. He'll feel your presence in moments of quiet, a song, a name, a pause long enough to feel. You are the phantom limb of his emotional body, the ache that reminds him of everything he once felt and everything he still fears. Why he bonds with you forever. The avoidant bonds forever with the one who reveals his shadow of love. You didn't just love him, you saw him. You met his withdrawal with patience, his silence with understanding. That experience becomes unforgettable because it violates his deepest belief that love equals danger. In you, love felt both terrifying and safe, and that contradiction marks his psyche like a scar. He might never return, but a part of him never leaves. Because in the unconscious, the bond is eternal. Energy doesn't disappear, it transforms. You became the unfinished chapter in his individuation, the one that calls him back to himself again and again. When he finally awakens. Sometimes life humbles the avoidant. A loss, a breakup, a moment of unbearable loneliness breaks through his walls, and when it does, he remembers you. Not as fantasy, but as truth. He realizes that what he called weakness was actually love. That what he ran from was the very thing that could have healed him. He learns that love isn't possession, it's surrender. That connection isn't loss of self, it's expansion of soul. And he finally understands. The one person he bonded with forever was never meant to cage him, but to awaken him. What this means for you. If you've ever been that person, the one an avoidant bonded with but couldn't keep, understand this. You were never forgettable. You were transformational. You represented the part of him he couldn't yet integrate, the part that carried the medicine he needed. Your love became his teacher, his mirror, his shadow work. You were never meant to fix him, only to awaken his capacity to feel, and in doing so, you reclaimed your own power. Because love leaves traces in the psyche, not as memories, but as symbols. And the one person an avoidant bonds with forever is the one who touched his soul deeply enough to break his pattern. In Jungian terms, she is the anima, the soul image that reminds him that love is not weakness, it is transformation, and whether he faces it or not, her energy remains, not as obsession, but as initiation, because in the end, even avoidant men cannot escape the truth that every bond we form is a mirror, and the one that changes us most is the one we never fully lose.